Good. Welcome, everyone. Still people joining us. I think we'll get quite a few over the next few minutes, but let's get going anyway. So welcome everyone to the 3 years of EOcafe. It doesn't seem like it, but 3 years today, more or less, that we had our first EOcafe, and I'm delighted to welcome for a second time Simonetta Cheli, Director of Earth Observation at the European Space Agency, and of course Simonetta was also our guest for the 50th EOcafe last November, just before the Ministerial that we're going to talk about today. So I'm not sure if Simonetta's becoming our go-to anniversary guest, but I hope we don't have to wait to the 100th or the 5-year anniversary for the next time. I guess it also shows that joining me in the EOcafe is not such a bad experience. The guests are willing to come back and do it a second time. So that's quite nice, and thank you very much, Simonetta. Just a quick reminder of the rules of the EOcafe. Well, rules, guidelines. Please leave your microphone on mute unless I specifically ask you to join into come into the conversation, which I will do if you have a question and we take the question, and I'll ask you to come in and give the question yourself. On the other hand, please feel free to leave cameras on. It's always good to see people. I know it also shows you how much you're watching or not, but we can't follow everyone. So please feel free to use your camera and to join in the cafe. As I said earlier or indicated, please put any questions you have into the chat, and then we'll take them from there. So I think that's everything else. I've still got my cup of tea. So if you haven't got a coffee, it's probably a bit late to go and grab one, but welcome to the EOcafe anyway. So ESA is a particularly important stakeholder for the EO services industry, and of course the space industry more broadly. The mandate to support the industrial development and to really follow an industrial policy on behalf of the member states, the ESA member states. And so this means that the member states can also use ESA as a development agency for the sector in their own countries, which many do. And in recent years, the EU has taken a stronger role with Galileo and Copernicus, and more recently about space security and even some further applications bordering on defence. I don't know how far we're getting all that today. But one of our goals is also to help new actors coming in to understand the way the whole space sector is working, the governance, etc. So if you have questions around the way things and the different organizations work together, please feel free to put those as well. So ESA is fundamentally working through budgets provided by the member states, and more recently from the EU for the programs I mentioned above. So every 3 years, the ministers responsible for ESA, and this varies from different countries. Sometimes it's research, sometimes it's industry. So there are different ministries responsible, but they come together to agree on the next cycle of funding. And the last such meeting was in November, and we had Simonetta in the EOcafe to explain the expectations for the Ministerial. And at the time, we said that it would be great to come back and to hear about the outcome. And I concluded the last EOcafe with Simonetta with exactly that message, that we look forward to hearing about the positive outcomes from the Ministerial. So Simonetta, welcome back. And I won't ask you to give a sort of resume as I normally do for the guests, because you did that last time quite recently. But maybe just a first comment. I mean, you've been in this role now for 18 months. This was your first Ministerial as the director responsible. So how did it go for you? Did you meet your expectations, please?
I think, thank you, Geoff. Good afternoon to the EARSC colleagues. I'm happy to be here for the third anniversary of the EOcafe. Yes, we had the exchange with you all before the Ministerial. It was my first Ministerial as director, but it was, I think, my 10th Ministerial in ESA. And I have to say, it was overall extremely successful, especially taking into consideration the context in which this Ministerial evolved and was prepared. quite different from the previous ones, due to at least the element of the geopolitical context of the war, which came quite late in the preparation steps of the ministerial. We normally prepare 1.5 to 2 years before the program proposals. We iterate with the 22 member states, and we do that in a quite solid way. But we arrived to February, and then Ukrainian war exploded, and this had quite some impact in terms of the preparation, in terms of inflation impact on the affordability of member states, and also in terms of reassessing some of the priorities. So it was a different one from the past. What I must say was also ministerial, where there was a strong ambition overall for the agency and for investments in space associated to those decisions, and also quite a lot of programmatic lines on the table for ministers to decide. So Earth observation was certainly a very strongly supported political domain. All member states and all ministers said how much they were praising the relevance of the support by space and space data and tools to the environmental policies, to the climate crisis. But certainly there were many programmatic lines on the portfolio, to mention some: exploration, telecommunication, science, and of course Earth observation was part of those, that didn't make it so easy in terms of decision on priorities and choices by the ministers in terms of budgets to be devoted to those lines. Overall, the result was extremely good. I think we got 17 billion euros collected for the next 3 years in terms of optional programs of the agency. And out of that, also the mandatory part of ESA programs, which is basically supporting the developments in terms of space science missions and infrastructure, was funded. And that needs full support by member states with the GMP pro rata contribution. So I must say, on my side, I was also quite pleased by the result. We have a slide maybe that could be displayed on the overall outcome for Earth observation of the ministerial. We have collected on overall program proposals with various programmatic lines of 3 billion, 2.7 billion totally from member states' contribution. So I must say 90% of what we had proposed is certainly a good result overall. If we then go into the various programmatic lines, of course, we had some that were extremely successful with the oversubscription by member states, just to mention some: climate space related to the climate variables, EUDUS-2, a new mission in collaboration with EUMETSAT on improving weather prediction and meteorology, and Copernicus for the next generation Sentinel mission on Sentinel-1 and 3 next generation were oversubscribed. And the one that was instead undersubscribed was the program called Future EO. This was an envelope proposal of 1.6 billion overall, so already quite a big, I would say, program in terms also of an envelope program that has different components. We call it in jargon Block 1, so the preparation studies for future missions, some explorer missions, which are scientific missions, very relevant for science advances, like Harmony was part of the package, an opportunity mission on gravity in collaboration with NASA, Gravity, which of course is also very relevant for the scientific community overall, and also for the ocean circulation monitoring. And that program, Future EO, has also the operation of the satellites and what we call Block 4, which is really the relevant part of the program for this community of EARSC, where you have all the support to the application activities, both the science one and the user related application and the demonstration projects that we run. And that Block 4 is also part of Future EO. On Future EO, as I said, we had a proposal of 1.6 billion and we got 1.2 billion. So we got an undersubscription of quite a few percentage. We got 77% of what we had asked. But I would like also to point out that on this program, we never have reached in the past. This is a program that evolves in different steps. This was segment 2 and phase 2 of this program. But we never had a yearly overall budget associated to Future EO so high as the one that was granted at the ministerial, which is basically 400 million per year on Future EO. So 1.2 total that was subscribed. So we also had on the on the table for ministers, decisions related not just only to the continuity of Copernicus, but to a new activity called Digital Twin of the Earth. This is not about building satellites, it's about exploiting the wealth of the data that we have from the current missions, combining those with high computing capabilities, with digital technologies, and providing not just the state of our planet, but evolutionary models and prediction models on the evolution of the planet. And that was also a very successful new programmatic line put on the table. On top of that, and that's very relevant for EARSC community, we had the Incube, which is the follow-up of the previous Incube 1, which is a joint co-funding program with industry where you have upstream and downstream activities associated to either technology development and value-added services, with the support to commercial perspective of those companies who have the good ideas and who are supported through Incube with the expertise of the agency. And then Truths. Truths was a UK proposed mission that became European. With European participation, it's going to provide a reference standard for climate measurements in terms of validating also other missions which are very relevant for climate change. And there, the decision by ministers was to go ahead with such Truth programs. We still have to complete the funding in 25, but that's what we have. So overall, if you see here, we had 7 programmatic line, very good overall contribution, very strong support politically for Earth observation. And I would say very good perspectives for the overall European and Canadian industry overall in the coming months, because we're now starting after the ministerial, of course, to do the implementation of these programmatic lines. So we are started with implementation plan for each of these programs. We also had an implementation plan agreed and go ahead on that for future EO with the under-subscription, with clear indication by member states on priorities related to the development of the science mission, the Explorer 10, preparation of the next Explorer mission, the Scout, which has more scientific missions, but still of technological and science relevance. And of course, the value of the application area, which is still there. So all these implementation plans were sort of approved after the ministerial at our program board in February. And now we have started with the industry days. We have started to brief industry about the various codes. We have a time and planning of when the codes will go out, when, on what activities. So we're spending the money, including on block 4, which, as I said, probably and possibly for the EARSC community is the most important. There was an industry day on block 4 to brief industry about the opportunities there mid-March. And we have a climate space information day, which is going to happen on the 10th of May. And all of that then, of course, is going to be the way that we implement the programs. And we have to deliver also geo-return in terms of investments made by member states. So we're also carefully looking and monitoring at the ITTs and at the way to address geo-return elements to the various countries compared to the investments they've done.
Okay.
That's for the ministerial. Then, of course, we have the usual work that goes ahead, and the usual work for us is continue the building of the satellites that we have in progress. Over 40 were already before ministerial, so we have more now. We need to launch in time, and we have a challenge today currently with the launcher situation, the unavailability after the failure of Vega C. We have a lot of Earth observation missions to be launched on Vega C and Vega in the future, in the coming years. We have additional challenges that we're tackling apart from the implementation of the ministerial, and those are related to the Copernicus budget gap that exists on the EU side, and that we need to somehow, together with the Commission, make sure it's fulfilled before the programmatic milestone that's coming up mid 2024. So we have to make sure that Copernicus goes ahead as a success story and a success program as it's been so far. And there are quite some issues still associated to that. We can elaborate on this further. And then, of course, this year we have 2 additional important elements of our activities beyond the current implementation of the program. One is ESA has initiated recently a transformation process. It means that our Director General has the ambition to have ESA evolving in terms of efficiency, in terms of speed, time to contract has to be improved, agility of the procurement mechanism, efficiency of the way to use the workforce and the resources in the agency are addressed. And we are looking at all of these aspects currently with the support of an external company, but really with a very strong engagement of the senior management at ESA in terms of looking at how to best use the resources we have, which are still scarce, to implement the programs, but also how to implement matrix organization with the tech support, how to speed time to recruit, time to contracts, and overall make the system more efficient. And the other thing, we have the summit planned at the end of in November in Sevilla, and the Spanish presidency. This summit will not be like a ministerial, it will not address contribution to programmatic lines, but will address more political initiatives, and in the context of what is related and relevant for Earth observation, there will be discussions on the initiative which is called the Green Future Accelerator.
The summit's early November, if I remember right.
This is early November, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know if there's anything more we need to explore around the summit, if there's any activities, but I'd like to, before sort of looking that way, come back to the decisions taken at the ministerial and how those may or may not affect the sector. I mean, one activity you've mentioned, which was, I mean, there's a lot of activities which are of interest to the EO services sector, but one that people were looking at was the preparation program for the expansion missions and the Sentinel user preparation.
Yeah. Sentinel user preparation SOUP, so-called in jargon, is part of what we call Block 4 in Future EO. Of course, this was part of the discussion we had on the refocusing and reprioritization of Future EO program, as we had only 77%. But I would like to say that all member states raised and mentioned very much the need and the relevance of preparing for the exploitation of the future expansion missions. So that was considered still a top priority. So there was some reduction of budget associated to that Sentinel user preparation component, but not much reduction of budget. And I think what is relevant to say is that at strategic level and programmatic level, there is, of course, the recognition of the need to prepare for the best exploitation of the data that will be available from those Sentinels coming from the expansion mission. And so this is being preserved. And it was not so evident when we had the initial, overview of the budgets available. And I think there are quite a lot of opportunities also for the value-added sector, like you represent here, to look into the calls that we're going to do with my colleagues. I know Rune is also connected on those activities related to SOUP in the coming months. Okay, so SOUP is maintained at about the same budget level? But basically, SOUP has been descoped. It was 40 million initially in the proposal on Future EO. It's now been reduced, and I cannot tell you exactly the figures because we have some figures which are associated to an initial urgent implementation of the program and some variables which are also impacting the way we spend the money available. I tell you, for example, the launcher aspect for launching EarthCare next year is still one of the variables. So we don't have a very fixed, firm budget associated to every single line until we don't have the two key variables. For example, the EarthCare launcher sorted, and it's not clear yet if we will launch with baseline Vega C or we have to use Falcon 9. We'll know by June. And also, if we don't have yet a very firm option on how we go about the collaboration on the gravity mission with NASA. So we still have some variables in the system. There's been some reduction of the SOUP compared to the initial 40 million, but I don't want to give a final figure here on this one because it's not appropriate at this stage. Okay, won't press on that. I imagine others will be asking that
question quite frequently. The other sort of funding gap was around Copernicus and the UK contribution into Copernicus. I think there seems over the last few days there seems to be some movement around that. At least the discussions are going on, even if there's still a budget issue to be resolved. Are you now optimistic regarding UK participation? What's your take on things? I know
Not
you've
yet.
been into it. No?
Not yet, in the sense that, yes, there's been some progress. First of all, this was not directly connected to any outcome of the ministerial. I mean, the ministerial had decisions and proposals on the table for Copernicus Next Generation Sentinels, which is related to Sentinel-1 Next Generation and Sentinel-3 Next Generation topo. And the budget gaps was resulting from the Brexit and from the fact that on the EU side, as UK left the EU, there was no way to sort of confirm the arrangements that were planned in terms of contribution by the UK to the Copernicus budget side of the EU. So that was the situation. That's why the initial contributing agreements that ESA had negotiated with the Commission on Copernicus was reduced from 4.1 billion to 3.3 billion. So a gap existed. And together with the Commission, we looked at the way to best handle that. And we agreed last year in January to insert in the development of the expansion mission a programmatic milestone that would be June 24. So to look and find budgets and look at this gap and try to solve it by June 24, which means all the contracts were going ahead for all the 6 expansion missions, no prioritization of one or the other mission. And then, of course, after the ministerial, first thing we did, we started to look into how, together with the Commission, tackle that. Now, the good news, as you say, Geoff, was the Windsor Agreement. So the signature of the Windsor Agreement reopened the opportunity for the UK to sign the protocol that they had already negotiated with the Commission to contribute on the EU side to Copernicus. The protocol exists, could be signed tomorrow. And I think it's a good basis for UK rejoining. Of course, the discussion in the UK, as far as we understand, is not just related to the space community. First of all, the protocol is on Horizon Europe, which is the biggest part, and Copernicus, which is the small part. And the discussion is really at the top level politically between budget, treasury, and beyond Minister Freeman, who I think is a convinced supporter of the UK to rejoin on the EU side the Copernicus program. So what we've been doing on our side, ESA, as UK is in ESA still a member, and we have a constant dialogue with the UK. We've prepared a dossier that we've discussed with the UK Space Agency to encourage them joining and signing the protocol in terms of giving perspectives on the industrial return that they could potentially get if they join back the program. Of course, 2.5 years have been passing, so you cannot be full speed at the same level, possibly not even at the same level of funding, but not even at the same level of return if you would have started from the beginning of the MFF. But all of this are consideration, which I think, of course, are done internally in the UK. What we did in terms of ESA, we supported just giving a perspective on the potential on industry contracts, on the perspectives, but also complementary, I would say, assessment on the science value for the science community to rejoin the program, but the user end also a perspective value. If they would join back in, they would also have the governance rights of accessing all the services of Copernicus, meaning, for example, at the occasion of the Turkey earthquake, possibility to activate the Copernicus emergency service or other service. So you have to look at more globally. And we helped the UK to elaborate a dossier on that. Now, of course, it's their decision, and we are aware, and we're totally out of that there are negotiations going on the budget side at the highest level between Commission and UK government, and we're not part of that, and we cannot and we should not be part of that. But of course, anything we do and we can do to encourage that joining of the UK to the program on the EC side is certainly part of our encouragement note. I'm not yet confident in the sense that, for what I know, negotiations are still ongoing. I think the rounds of negotiation coming up in the next few days, and frankly, I don't know what the result would be. And as I said, it's not just connected purely to Copernicus, but it's also connected to other dossiers Horizon Europe. So I cannot frankly say I'm optimistic or not, because I don't have the elements to
I mean, it's linking Horizon Europe, Copernicus, Euratom, and there's a lot of pressure coming from the research community, academic community, which of course is good. But I mean, what for me is good is that finally it's being reported that there is, there are discussions going on, and it was in the UK press the last couple of days that there was a willingness from both sides to negotiate the budget position as well. So we
really strongly hope that this will happen. Yeah. Just to be very frank with you, I think it would make a lot of sense. Also, it doesn't make much sense for the UK eventually to keep out and then go back in the next MFF. They would lose completely their competitive advantage in terms of industry and potential for industry. And I think they would lose completely the role, either they are part of the game and they're from now back in, or it makes it very difficult. Also, on ESA side, where they are members, of course, of ESA, it's not disputed, to stay inside the game in terms of value-added operations and development of technology.
It's a big level of uncertainty, and of course, it's completely political uncertainty. I see that Peter de Selding in the chat is asking a question, so maybe we'll come back to that a little bit later on. I'll take questions in a few minutes. I just wanted to look at the sort of broader strategic picture, because last time you were making quite a strong point about how there was a strategic positioning to the proposals linked to three key policy areas: the SDG priorities of the United Nations, the Green Deal from the EU, to which you linked the Farm and Fork initiative, and the climate variables and supporting to have the climate variables, which of course is a specific element in the block in the program. Against all that, you had as you've said, the background of Ukraine and what was how that was sort of tearing countries in different directions and raised the whole profile. Were those three policy areas recognized as a strategic direction, endorsed as a strategic direction, or were they moderated or changed somewhat by the wider geopolitical context?
I think the context of the climate crisis and what is all related to climate, which is all the UNFCCC, ECB's, COP arrangements, is absolutely top priority for all the ministers in terms of political statement that was clear. In terms of contribution to the program, it was declined for different countries in different programmatic lines in terms of contribution. The SDGs was not on top of the agenda for the ministerial in terms of neither political reference, neither programmatic content. It was more for us as the general frame in which we developed the proposals. And the Green Deal is there everywhere. Is there in terms of Copernicus satellites, is there in terms of all the activities we will develop in the context of the variables, but it's also there in terms of what we try to do with FutureEO, with demonstration of application. Today we are funding via FutureEO something that we call GTIF, which is information factories we have a demo started with Austria, which will become operational in a few days. It was kicked off in February, and this is all based on user requirements, which are real user requirements from environment, transport ministries, a wide user requirement sector in Austria. And this is all related to Green Deal. It's monitoring the evolution of the transport sector and quality of the air. It's monitoring the green areas in the cities, is monitoring air quality in the cities, and it's all related to things. It's also planning energy, windmills, location. So that's all associated to Green Deal. And this is just an example of one of the many activities which of course are associated to supporting the Green Deal that we have inside our programmatic lines.
Okay. Just one further point, maybe before we open for questions. Last time when we talked, this is sort of moving a little away from the ministerial, I guess. So perhaps but we had you just launched the DPS process, and the step 1, step 2, you launched a call, you've received calls, you've kicked off some projects. Do you consider this was a success, and what are the lessons learned from the sort of the first round of this activity?
So the DPS, as you know, we have category 1, 2, and 3. And when we met last time, I think we had just kicked off the category 1 call. Today, what I can say is that we just signed recently the 9 contracts with the companies for category 1. I must say this is not just a success story of ESA, but also ESA and the Commission together, because in the end, all thought we couldn't implement a more agile, faster system to support the competitiveness of the industry and of data providers. Well, what we did, we imported into the ESA Start system DPS elements, which were those of the Commission, for example, for the digital ITTs on the GG Connect side. So that made it faster, more agile, and speedy procedure in terms of procurement that we now have imported in the agency also to support commercialization, which, as you know, is one of the priorities of ESA in Agenda 25. So I think the signature of those contracts, we haven't yet publicized the signature because we will do it soon, most likely around the Copernicus 25th anniversary, together with the Commission, to make it real visible as a success story, is going to be done in terms of visibility of the action. What we have also done, we have launched and kicked off category 2. Category 2 is meant to be for data provision by more experienced companies, so companies which have been more than 10 years on the market and can actually have more experience in the domain. We're still in the running of that, so I cannot say on that we have yet lessons learned. And we also will have for sure lessons learned. And on category 3, we plan to have a decision, I think, just in the coming days, and kick it off early May. So it's something in progress. We're also discussing with the Commission, because the industry have come back to us saying, oh, we need more, budgets associated to data buy. Today we have currently, as you know, 465 million euros associated to data buying the current contributing agreements that we are delegated to support purchasing of data. And we are using those for this category DPS, category 1, 2, and 3. We think there's a need maybe to expand that budget in terms of budget increase for the next step. And apparently there's no possibility to do that in the current MFF, but we're looking into options of how to certainly at least together with the Commission, because it's Commission money, increase those budgets associated to data buy for the next MFF.
Okay. Well, again, anything that obviously the industry is fully behind and supportive there. There's quite a few questions. Placed into
you want to moderate the questions? Maybe it's best, Geoff, or
well, I need to assimilate them first. But I see the first one from Peter. It's come back to the topic that we discussed around the UK and the now opening of the possibility of UK rejoining. Peter, I don't know if we answered your question. We didn't tackle truths.
I see the question by Peter. Hi, Peter. Good afternoon. I think the idea is in this negotiation where I said we're completely out of the loop because it's a UK government commission negotiation. One of the approach which is put forward, which seems to be quite logical, is the fact that the MFF has now been started over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So there is a pro rata discussion in terms of potential contributions by the UK to the activities which are planned. So the discussion is on a potentially pro rata reduction of the initial total budget, and that is the idea. And are we looking at stretching out some of our programs to accommodate UK return to Copernicus? No, we're not planning to stretch out our programs. We're planning to make sure that if UK joins back, gets the return, not just on ESA side, but also on the complementary funds on the EU side, that's for sure.
Okay, I take that as answered. Peter, you put a further question in if you wish. Now let me. Emmanuel Mondon is asking about the civil security from space
Yeah.
program. Emmanuel, do you want to come and put your question?
Hi, Emmanuel. Good afternoon. Our role in civil security from space. First, we have to recall how this program came on the table for ESA. It was a program that it was the ambition of ESA DG to have programs which were between different directorates, so multi-domain activities, so-called. One of those who survived, because there were a few that didn't survive, was the civil security from space. Initially, there was an Earth observation component and a telecom component into this program proposal, and at some point, 1 year before Ministerial, it was decided that the lead would be with TIA, so with the telecom director, because the component related to telecom was primary in terms of budgets and volumes compared to EO. The EO component is still very important and valuable in the sense that, as you know, we've been working on civil security from space for over 30 years, responding to user requirements, demonstrating the value of the data with EMSA, with all the partners, Satellite Center, and many more, also with Frontex and other partners. And so we have an EO component in that civil security from space program, which was actually funded at the Ministerial with 18 million euros. So this program is now in the initial steps of implementation with an Earth observation component that will be managed by my colleagues in Earth observation. By the way, I think also Gordon and Rune, who are the lead on that, are connected here if they want to comment on that. And certainly the Earth observation activities will relate to research activities and to demonstration of the relevance of EO data in support of civil security. So there is a strong still component of EO inside that CSS program. And I hope I replied to your question, Emmanuel.
Yeah, great news. Thanks. Thanks, Simonetta.
Thanks, Emmanuel. Tony Sefton's asking about the reorganization and some elements of that. Tony, do you want to come in?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, thanks, Geoff. Thanks, Simonetta. Yeah, behind my question, Simonetta, I suppose is partly the fact that I retired from ESA Business Applications a couple of years ago. So I'm aware, of course, that there's been some planned reorganization in the pipeline now for 2 or 3 months. I saw recently that there's going to be a new directorate, CIC, Competitiveness, Industry and Commercialization. Probably got that the wrong way around. And I think Business Applications is going into there, but I'm not quite sure what's happening to the rest of the applications. So perhaps you could say a little bit, for instance, does that affect also anything going on within Earth observation or navigation?
Yes.
How it affects
So thank you, Tony, and nice to see you again. Following the Ministerial, there were some reorganization in terms of our internal reorganization in ESA. There was a discussion on how to possibly strengthen the activities related to the support to the commercial sector, and basically BAS, so what you mentioned as business application that was under the Telecom Directorate before, has been passed to the Directorate of Geraldine Najad, the Commercialization Industrial Policy and Directorate, which has changed name, but also integrated BAS. But BAS as activity will still be managed by the Telecom JCB program board, but the teams have been transferred to the remit of Geraldine. There was also another discussion associated to that, potentially to look at other commercially related activities in the agency, but activities like, for example, Incubed, which is also co-funding and with the commercial relevance, it was decided not to move to CIP because you need the expertise of the experts in EO to support those Incubed activities, and it was left inside our directorate under the remit of Rune, by the way.
Okay, and navigation, is that affected at all?
No, navigation, no, not at all for now. Navigation is been preserved as a full-fledged directorate of navigation, and that's the plan. Currently, the director of navigation is acting also director of telecommunication in ESA, Javier Benedicto, but the position of director of telecommunication has been open. So the two have been kept separate, and the plan is to have 2 separate directorates in the future.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay. There's a question that I'm not sure I really understand. Volkard Gale, in the context of the Copernicus expansion missions, the role of small satellite constellations. Volkard, do you want to develop that a little bit further?
Yeah, good morning, first of all, and thank you for having me here at the EOcafe, and congratulations, by the way, on 3 years of EOcafe, very successful.
Thank you.
My question, Simonetta, was the expression, or putting it with the expansion missions, was probably the wrong expression. What I was referring to is the role of future small satellite missions, specifically from Europe, and how to bolster the European small sat sector in conjunction with the existing Copernicus, or should I say Sentinel missions, as CCMs, for instance. How do you see the role and the contribution that very dedicated small satellite missions, especially constellations, multi-satellite constellations, talk has been about this for a long time now, can play with dedicated sensors for very specific applications? And I also, as you see, as I added the question, so it's a dual question, how can this be coordinated with the needs of the downstream sector, with the needs of actual applications? To just quickly expand on that, I had a conversation with a colleague and friend who is residing in the US currently, who mentioned that, there's more billions of dollars going into small satellite missions, but it's all kind of uncoordinated. It's more about the financialization of space and putting metal into space. So where I see a huge opportunity for Europe would be to launch very dedicated missions that are actually in full context with the ultimate end user of the data. So this is something that is often overlooked from my experience from admittedly over 20 years with DLR. We've been looking at that for the longest time. And also, Jan Werner was a big proponent of this, who was my boss at the time, by the way.
Okay, understand. Hi, Wolfgang, good afternoon. So just to try to respond to your complex question, as you can imagine, the current thinking in ESA on this is that the Sentinels are still the backbone of what we do in Copernicus, but all these constellations are potential new constellation, no matter if they're publicly or private funded, should be complementary to the Sentinels, which are the backbones, and potentially they're not necessary responsibility of ESA to develop, but what do we do there? We support, for example, the development of an Atlantic constellation, which is an initiative by Portugal and Spain bilaterally to develop an Atlantic constellation. They're in different ways, and in particular with the scheme possibly of a support of a third-party mission type of thing. We will support the Atlantic constellation development for Spain. IRIDE, the national PNRR Italian program, has a similar remit. It's a constellation of small sats to be launched by 2026. Also, that one is seen as potential complementary in terms of data, in terms of also services to the current Sentinels. We're also looking in terms of studies, but there is studies, I must say, of what could be constellations in terms of either complementing or replacing. I would like to say more complementing than replacing for the next generation of Sentinel-2. So we're looking at what could be the complementarity that could be provided by constellations there, but also in the field of follow-up of Sentinel-3. We have a baseline decided before ministerial of the baseline reference, which is the SWAT US French mission. Of course, we have as alternative in the studies a constellation mechanism for altimetry. And so these constellations are currently seen as either alternative or more likely complementary to the current Sentinel planning of generation, next generation. And they're either private or they're co-funded or funded at the public level as the IRID or the Atlantic Constellation one. And there, of course, our job in ESA, and together with the Commission, I would like to say, is to make sure that, first of all, this the ones which have a value of new commercial constellations, and there are many initiatives in Europe around that. I mean, you have many new providers and builders of small sats today in Europe. You have it in Belgium, you have it in Finland, you have it in Germany, you have it, you know, many places, that they're somehow supported by an ESA expertise, by the possibility to have data organized by the Commission and ESA funding, to have eventually help in terms of accessing venture capitals for these initiatives, which are private commercial initiatives. So there is a role of the agency still in supporting those commercial initiatives, even when they're constellation.
Thank you very much. That answers my question very well. Thank you, Simonetta.
Thank you.
I mean, I think you allude to it, Simonetta, but surely one of the main instruments there is again the DPS that we were just talking about, and the ability to support and act as a sort of, you know, I hesitate to use the word anchor tenancy, but the certainly a pre-buy, a pre-guarantee through the DPS scheme to enable commercial missions to get off the ground, and adding expertise and the sort of resources of ESA to that would be very, very helpful as well. Still on the question, Peter is coming back again on the further question around the UK and the budget. Peter, do you want to just come in and explain?
Well, yeah, I wrote it down. I think Simonetta understands that the UK is the Commission is saying, and it's a legitimate debate on both sides, that you can't just take 2.5 out of 7 and say, well, you're 2.5 years late, so we'll take that pro rata obligation off your shoulders in the UK, because a lot of the spending at Copernicus, as Simonetta knows as well as anyone, is back weighted. You have the launch, you have the CD phase of the satellite construction and the operations. So the first 2 years aren't really reflective of what a 7-year program looks like in terms of the weighting of the investment. And so the UK says, well, that's fine, but we've already spent in truths and future EO money that we would have spent on Copernicus had we been in the program. So I can see why you're hesitant here, because it's a very complex issue. And I just wonder whether ESA has come up with some studies showing how much real investment has been done over 2.5 years in Copernicus expansion, and how much remains to be done in 5.5 years, to give a more accurate reflection of the investment that's been made and can't be got back, and the investment to come. Thanks.
Yeah, we have done this dossiers, and as I said, it will not be, if the UK joins back 1-to-1, if you could have 500 million, you won't get 500 million back in industrial contracts today, but you will get an awful lot back in terms of the industrial contracts, plus being back in the governance, being back in the exploitation of the data to support creation of companies, being back into activating and benefiting of the services. So you have to look at the overall package, and not the 1-to-1, I invest 1, I get back 1 in contracts, but the element of the contracts, of course, is also very relevant. And we've worked on that dossier together with the UK to support their discussions at home on that.
Yeah, thanks. Was in fact talking with Gilles Ollier, who's asking about the relationship between ESA and DG in the Commission, DGRTD, and the collaboration that's put in place. Can you comment on that?
Yes, the collaboration with DGRTD has been, by the way, prepared for years by Gilles Ollier, who's been a key player in that, and by my ESA colleagues. We also have had for a few years now a seconded ESA staff to DGRTD to make sure this collaboration was well organized. I would like to say that now we are at the point where it's a success story. Not only we've signed a sort of an arrangement a couple of years ago that was formalizing the thing, but now we're at the heart of it, in the sense that on the Horizon Europe funds, there are 60 million more or less allocated to activities that we have agreed to do in a complementary way with phased calls. On the DGRTD side, they're doing their calls, but what they plan to do in terms of ITT, no matter if it's on the Arctic research or in the climate change sector or in research associated to other topics, it's complementary to what is ESA funding in future EO on the open science, and there is a very strong coordination between the two teams of DGRTD and the team of Rune here in ESRIN doing open sciences in terms of phasing the calls and making sure we don't pay the things twice, and we actually do complementary activities. So I would like to say it's a success story. It's of course directly or indirectly connected also to the ministerial results, in the sense that on ESA's side, what we will do in terms of collaboration with RTD comes a lot also from what we have in future EO. But I would like to say it's both sides the success story, because there's funding in both sides to make sure that now the things we've decided to do next week, we are at the Arctic conference together. And I think Arctic is certainly an area where we've agreed to work together in terms of science, research, and all of that. And we are really phasing everything that's been done on both sides.
Yeah, I think it's a subject that maybe we will come back to. I don't mean today, but in the future, because I think there has been an awful lot of work gone into that, into building that relationship, and it will be good to understand better.
DG IMPA, I see. Yeah. I can comment on that one as well. We signed in December the agreement with DG IMPA to implement a node in Panama, but which has a regional remit in Latin America, Copernicus node in the Latin American region for supporting DG IMPA. It's a budget of about 12 million, with a complementary budget of Panama of 8 million, so it's about 20 million total. And this will offer great opportunities for companies in Europe to support the bids and get a role in the regional Latin America region. I think there are great opportunities there. Again, Rune, who's connected here, is managing the activities with the teams. We have just hired the person that will start in June in ESA to manage these activities in ESRIN. And on DG IMPA, the success story is also that complementary to what we're doing in Latin America. In January, we signed another arrangement for managing a collaboration with IMPA, again with delegation of funds of about 7 million, if I'm correct, on the Philippines. And we're currently discussing a potential collaboration on Africa.
I mean, this has a lot of potential, and something that looks to be a really good initiative.
And I think it's a lot of potential for European companies, that the ones that are in EARSC, because there the opportunities are coming, the budgets are there, and it's potential entry into new markets beyond Europe. Also, what I like to say there, it's we're trying to make at best the synergy between the availability of Copernicus data. So there is a collaboration also in place with DEFIS there, and IMPA, which has a more political responsibility of promoting the role of the European companies and also promoting collaboration with those regions.
We see it as very strong, and something that we identified quite some time ago in relation to the introduction of the free and open data policy, and the fact that this was a global initiative, and the Commission wanted diplomatically to use the data as part of a diplomatic mission. But our line at the time was always that if that's fine, but then it's making data available on the free and open data policies to the competitors of European companies, and therefore there needs to be something put in place to really help the European companies sort of redress that disequilibrium of the playing field. So I think this is a very important initiative, and one that really reflects something that can really help the European sector develop and really deliver for Europe, exploiting on the Copernicus program. I noted earlier Emmanuel Mondon again was asking a question regarding the relationship between Incubed and Scale Up. Emmanuel, do you want to just develop that a little bit?
Yeah.
Still there.
And I made another question regarding links and overlap between a number of initiatives, estimation of CSC data access, digital twin Earth, and space for green future, and that's the same content, I would say. You were mentioning, Simonetta, that civil security from space was or is one of the still alive multi-domain activity. It looks like it's quite difficult to have across directorates and I'm lost with this intuitive include on EOP scale up on sectors.
Emmanuel, you're breaking up an awful lot. It's perhaps difficult to get the full question. Maybe
I can just reply briefly. If I got something from what you said, Emmanuel, on the relation between incubed and scale up and what is the difference. So I would like to say that scale up was started as an initiative by CIP to support labs, which don't have just the remit to work on activities related to Earth observation, but on a wider scale on all ESA activities. And these labs are now being opened. There was the first one opened in Sweden, and then a number of various countries are opening this lab. In that context, the agreement we have is that the expertise and everything that's related to activities related to Earth observation, first of all, is supported by the Earth observation teams and the Earth observation expert people. Secondly, that InCubed remains the mechanism programmatically by which we support the development of activities related to commercialization on EO. So this is a clear party line that we have with Geraldine. Of course, we're trying to discuss further implementation, collaboration, and at best, lack of misunderstanding by any potential external interlocutor on that. But just to mention, we're going to have a conference organized by the leadership of EOP with the PhilAb and Borghi on InCubed and commercialization, together with the team of Geraldine in Paris at the end of November. And I think this shows you how we're really working together on these initiatives. Great news, thanks.
A question that came up the other day, Simonetta, which maybe I just pick up on the back of that. Is Fee Week something that will there be a Fee Week this year?
Yeah, we love Fee Week.
Yeah.
It's just that with the Living Planet Symposium last year, we didn't make it. Yeah. And this year, when I asked my colleagues, they like this with the summit and with the, so we probably don't make the Fee Week, but we have this workshop, which I just mentioned on commercialization, but we do intend to continue. The Fee Week, I think, was a success format. It's just that we didn't have the energy and the time and the resources to do another one right now, but we like the Fee Week.
Okay, fair enough. So there'll be the conference workshop at the end of November in Paris, and Fee Week will be back sometime maybe next year. Okay, I mean, certainly it was very popular given the number of people that the site was sort of saturated. Okay, I think really I'll just draw it to a close there. We're coming up to the time. I'm not sure let's simplify it. Are there any further messages you want to deliver, Simonetta?
No, just to continue to say to the EARSC community and the value-added sector, first of all, that we want this continuous interaction with you, either via EARSC or bilateral as we have it. I think today is the day of opportunities. I think the investments which were overall made at the Ministerial at 2.7 are not looking only at development of satellites, they're also looking at opportunities for the value-added sector that you represent here. So I think you should really actively follow the call plans and the information days and talk to my colleagues on the opportunities. I think it's very much the moment to do so. We're also seriously looking at how to best not just have words associated to supporting the commercial sector. So things I think which are very concrete, like the collaboration with INPA for Latin America or Southeast Asia, represent additional opportunity for all your sector, which you should pursue and not consider less than relevant, that even things which are in block 4, GDA, everything that's also related to having the chance to expand your market base elsewhere. And of course, you have a very strong and important role in developing further services and products related to the exploitation of the EO data overall as a sector. So the dialogue and the continuous dialogue that we've been having for years in the implementation of the program, also in the thinking about how to have the program develop is essential for us. So that's I'd like to say here, because it's something that it's been working and we want to continue it working in the
Thank
evolution.
you.
I mean,
yeah, and the whole sector. I mean, obviously, there's always more, but I think we really appreciate that. You know, there's a good working relationship and things are really moving. Just before really closing out, I think that we have a short video to show. Are you ready, guys, with the video? Very much in the context of developing the community. So there
congratulations.
We go. And thank you very much, Simonetta, for being with us again on our anniversary, and look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Thank you, and bye to everybody.
Thanks everybody for being with
Bye.
us. Next EOcafe, 2 weeks time, Thursday the 4th of May. We've just unfortunately been let down by the guests we had planned, so we're reorganizing that. So look out for the announcements for the topic and the guest on the 4th of May. We hope to make that visible very soon. And then in the summer, we have the Expand EO. Hopefully see a lot of you there, if not all of you there. Please register 13th, 14th of June in Brussels. It will be a not to miss conference to link the community with users. We have anything else? I think that's it, and that's enough. And thank you all for being with us once again. Thank you, Simonetta, and look forward to seeing all of you in 2 weeks' time, and to carry on our discussions. We'll close the call there now. Anyone who wishes to stay and just chat, please feel free to do so. But we'll turn the recordings off, and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.